Hello and welcome to the 12th 18th Brumaire Livestream. We're going to today do Chapter 6, the victory of Napoleon Bonaparte, Louis Bonaparte. I've been drinking people last night. I have a hangover, and most of us here are all in some kind of various state of disarray. So let's bring them in one by one and see who's do we have there. We got James Knight. James, you're back after a trip to where exactly?
I've just been going through some kind of extended lockdown, remote working hellscape that I'm sort of just about out the other side of. So I'm glad to be back to re-enter the fray as we see Bonaparte's rise and the various dynastic Game of Thrones that seem to go on in this chapter. So I look forward to kicking it with y'all.
Excellent. Moving swiftly on to, well, James is in London. I'm back in the homeland. I've been out rubbing my genitals in the green grass of Ireland for the last 6 hours. Finally feel like I'm home again. Now, also who's home again is Puya, who's back all the way in somewhere near Michigan, and he's burning cop cars. Puya, how's it going?
Yeah, it's feeling pretty warm over here. But nice and toasty.
Did you remember to get out of the cop car before you set it on fire, Puya?
Yeah, fortunately I did. No, just kidding.
So
it was Michigan. Yeah, I'm sure you've seen it in the news.
In your local town, how big is your local
protest.
town? You just say
Very small.
Tell us about what happened.
It happened in Grand Rapids. Like it's
How big is Grand Rapids? How many?
Like 400,000, I think. Let me look it up.
What, and they were burning cop cars, were they?
Yes.
Excellent news.
Yeah. Glad to hear it's not just all nonprofits now.
I was not involved though.
Yeah, totally not. Okay, you might have heard.
It's 200,000.
All right, even better. Their cop car, that must be like 1% of their cop cars, 2% of their cop cars getting torched. Excellent.
6 of them.
Yeah. Okay, you might have heard Esri button in there. Esri,
Hey.
how's it down in the sweltering mangroves of the sunny south?
Yeah, the very moist. Actually, it's like 1% humidity, so all the Arizonans are like, "Oh man, pretty moist." Pretty funny. By the way, Tom, Bolians are the blue species from Star Trek with the bald heads. Yeah, so Bolian the Bonaparte.
Oh yeah, the really blue ones with the antenna.
Not with the antennas. Those are the Andorians. They're one of the 4 founders of the Federation. But the Bolians, they're the bald ones. Anyway, it put an image in my head of Napoleon III as Bolian, and it's not going away. That's staying there for sure. And let's see. I don't know. Just happy to hear about the burning cop cars. Happy to hear that you can't just disappear dissidents without consequences. It's nice. It's a good feeling.
Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting to the disappearing of people. Fucking hell, moving quickly.
Yeah. So study your marks, people.
And Trump has found his agency. He's found his arm of the state, which is the DHS, Department of Homeland Security, which has, I think, more than the CIA, the FBI, and some other thing put together in numbers. I think it's like 40 to 50,000.
Yeah, people built that up thinking, oh, that's only for out-group. It's never going to be used on in-group. You fucking morons. Good job. Yeah. So the same things that's been happening to immigrants is now happening to dissidents. First they came for X.
Remember when the libs were just head over heels in love with the security state like a year ago?
Yeah, no, that didn't take long. Now they're like literally, I don't know, and the funny thing is that the fucking resistance, quote unquote, like the bullshit anti-Trump stuff, like all of a sudden took up forms of physical resistance when it like narratively fit, like which was fucking surreal.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were like actually smashing like Fed shit. You know what?
Burning cop cars in the street.
I mean, look, like I don't know. Is that what happened in Michigan? Because I only know about like what happened in Portland. But the point is that like all the cynics and skeptics were like, all the cynics, I should say, were like, the movement's over. We had our flare up, and now we have our recuperation. Let's just go back to talking about COVID. Nope. It's still rolling. This is too deep of an aspect of class struggle to just go away like that again. So
it's rolling.
Good.
This is going to be here for 5 to 10 years in some form or another. That's my prediction.
I mean, if this is going to keep happening, then we have, I don't know. It's a promising start to like class struggle reappearing, the rebirth of history, you might say.
Absolutely. Okay, let's move it over to the main man himself, Mr. Semi-Bombastic. Kyle, how's it going over there?
Hey, so a couple things. First of all, I'm in Calgary here. Actually, I finished my international travels and returned home. COVID is coming back in Calgary, and it's really frustrating. Apparently there was like a barbecue on Canada Day, and like hundreds of people got infected. It's really weird reading the stories of like, many people who were there like losing their sense of smell and taste, which is a real just horrific kind of poetic justice sort of thing. After going to a barbecue, it's pretty creepy. That's pretty unsettling. And I can't believe, people in the rest of the province are kind of like, they've completely left their guard down because cases aren't really going up. They're almost non-existent. But people in Calgary really need to get their shit together, and take this seriously. Anyway, aside from that, I am very interested to talk about, last time we were saying this moment is very different from what we see in 18th Brumaire. I still think that's true. I still think there's significant differences going on here. But I will say Trump seems to have found his like society of December the 10th. This is he's got his running dogs to go out there and try to basically incite civil unrest so as to give him an opportunity to claim the mantle of the party of order. Doesn't seem to be going very well for him, though. So, great. I hope I hope he completely eats shit.
Do you think? I don't think they're really like the Decembrists. I think, are they not just like, I don't know, like some kind of weird National Guard?
They're not exactly the same thing, but there's a kind of overlap of like, kind of like 1 foot in the security state and 1 foot in just sort of disorganized pro-fascist politics. And I think that that's somewhat analogous to what we see with the Society of December the 10th, where like, some of the people, Marx just sort of points out as being lumpen, et cetera, but like some of the people were clearly just like sympathetic, soldiers and police and whatnot. Anyway, they seem to be taking orders directly from Trump. And I think that's the key point here, which is analogous. They're not, this is not like something that is happening at a lower level of coordination within the security state. This seems to be like directly politically motivated by Trump in order to try to create a pre-election situation for himself, especially given that he's more or less in the same way as Bonaparte sort of stated, it would be nice if term limits were removed. It would be nice if I didn't have to resign when this election was over. Just kind of making these sort of pro-coup musings in the media. Again, I maintain he's not as smart as Bonaparte, but he's doing some sort of similar types of behavior here, and I think there's some analogies that can be drawn, even if the rest of the situation is totally different.
When did he say those comments about term limits? Is that not long ago?
That was long ago, but his statements that he would not recognize an election result were, I believe, last week. I think he said something to that effect.
Fair enough. Yeah, I didn't hear that one.
I mean, you're looking to the Americans to check. We've tuned out a long time ago.
Yeah, this was. He basically said, like, yeah, no, I'm not interested in acknowledging an election result. So I may look up the direct source while we're chatting here, but I definitely remember seeing that come up.
I remember he used to joke about that stuff. Was it on the campaign trail? Like,
I'm not sure, so I'll have to look for the exact source.
God, the DHS are a bunch of cucks, man. I mean, like, at least December's got sausages. What are they getting besides the wages of whiteness? The sausages of whiteness.
Sausages of whiteness. Exactly.
It's a kind of a weird one, though, because I can imagine, I've read somewhere that internally in the Department of Homeland Security, there's very low morale. And
I believe that.
And like, so I think it's easier to get like a group of your actual supporters, like the Decemberists, to do stuff that's a more stable coalition for you as an actor than that top-down command structure of the state that is with poor morale. It's kind of it's not as good a fit, I wouldn't think.
That's fair.
Yeah, most of Trump's active supporters seem to be dedicated to giving themselves COVID and anti-mask protests. So let's just hope nature takes its course there.
Did anybody hear there was a case there? I think it was from somewhere like in Houston or Texas or somebody where they're throwing these COVID parties where, like, if you get tested positive, then you throw a house party and all your mates come and see if they can catch it from you. And this fucking, he was only in his 20s. He caught it, and he was lying in hospital on his deathbed, and he was like going, I think I've made a mistake.
Oh, no. That's awful.
Isn't that fucking... I thought like COVID parties were just people that said, oh, let's have a fucking party during COVID times. Not, I have COVID, let's come and see when I spit in your face, you catch it.
Oh my God.
Like a weird bug catching party.
Yeah. That's exactly what I was thinking. They, used to kind of scaremonger about these minority of HIV seeking homosexuals, during the 80s. Like, I wonder how much of this is like played up by the media, but yeah, that's bug catching. That's weird.
But as to Carl's point about people not taking it seriously, I mean, like in London right now, 2 doors down from me last Saturday, there was a house party with like at least 40 people, like in a small house. So like in London, it's like completely out the window. So people are essentially having bug catching parties like by proxy, almost, like not even like realizing that that's what they're doing. It's pretty crazy.
Here's a moist towelette. Towelettes for everybody. Make sure to wipe your face with that.
Yeah, and like and the police don't care. Like there was a stabbing outside my house on the same night, and the police were like investigating that, and there was clearly this house party going on, and the police just didn't give a shit, So it's like obviously a stabbing is more important than people having a party, but it's like clearly like there were people like spilling out of the house onto the street. It's kind of crazy.
But yeah, I'm not like pro social Darwinism. That's weird.
Yeah,
they were having parties here. Like, I live in like I live in like a pretty progressive area of the States, and they were having parties here like in April and March, like at the peak of social distancing.
Yep. You gotta believe it.
Yeah, there was a soiree in Connecticut that temporarily made that state the COVID capital before New York blew it out of the water, as New York always does. New York, fucking New York. And
But,
I can only imagine that there's parallel events happening in Ronazona. Sans the wine.
Well, it is growing extremely fast in the South.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm looking at a map right now, and it shows that the fastest growth rates are in the South.
You better believe it, baby. If you want to know, yesterday or the day before, I flew from London to Dublin.
Thank you to Anar Frost there. I just saw that, quote unquote, I have to see, he says. I have to see.
So this is President Trump. He
Yeah.
refused to commit to accepting the results of the 2020 election and ensuring a peaceful transition of power in an interview with Fox News Sunday host Chris Wallace aired on Sunday. Yeah. So,
Well, I think he's probably just gonna win.
no, he's a big underdog.
You know what? Like,
He's 10 points behind the polls. It's very
the
hard.
fact that there's
I don't
no
know
like
about yeah.
there's kind of no like second round of aid coming, so that I feel like that's the make or break moment. If he could give another round of Trump checks and bullshit, instead he's going with all this like, let's open the schools, what's a few million dead kids kind of thing.
Yeah, that sounds like the worst idea.
So he
I've
says,
ever heard.
I think mail-in voting is going to rig the election. I really do. And then when pressed on the issue, he says, I have to see. Look, I have to see. No, I'm not going to just say yes. I'm not going to say no.
Sweet. I mean,
and incidentally, they're trying to destroy the postal service at this time to create all kinds of, confusion over mail-in ballots.
Fuck. I'll tell you what. All the libs flipped on e-voting. They all sound like Paul Cockshot now.
Yeah.
Before they were like, oh my god, Koch brothers, voting terminals, there's a big Russiagate conspiracy to make it, to rig e-voting. And now they're like, oh god, if there's no e-voting, there just won't be voter turnout. Help computers, we trust you now. Black Mirror season, 6 didn't come out, so, in my goldfish memory, I'm not scared of it anymore.
I just took a flight from London to Dublin, and it was probably a third full, so it was quite full. And people were all wearing their masks. And then it's only a short flight, it's only 50 minutes, an hour tops. And what do they do? Halfway through the flight, come down to the trolley and giving people snacks. So what does everybody do? Take off their fucking masks to eat a packet of crisps in a fucking air-conditioned small space with fucking 80 people. What is the logic of that? They're actually giving people crisps to eat when they should be
on a 50-minute flight.
Yeah.
Yeah, that flight is literally you go up and come down pretty much.
That's it. You're about 10 minutes at the top.
Yeah.
God, the only thing you should consume on a 50-minute flight is half a Xanax.
Half a Xanax. Fuck's sake. My May is a pharmacist, and we were flying an early morning flight to Italy one time and going skiing. It was 6 o'clock flight or something. And it was a 2 or 3 hour flight. And he gave me a Valium or something to help me sleep.
Shit.
And I took the Valium anyway, and I was sitting on the plane, and I was wearing this kind of woolly jumper thing, and I totally got just knocked out, and I started drooling, and I drooled the spit all the way from my mouth all the way down to the bottom of the jumper. And I had apparently the boys were laughing at me so much, they said that there was a continuous line of drool for 2 hours. When I woke up, all my clothes were wet. And
oh God!
I was getting off the plane, like the air hostess were like pointing at me and laughing.
That's one right out of the How to Be a Bastard playbook, Tom.
Yeah, that was a good one. Never again. Okay, let's get going here. We're talking a lot of shit talking here today.
20
Okay.
minutes in. Yeah, let's get an Arthur Frost comment on there. Oh, yeah.
I put another one up by accident. Sorry about that. Okay, so
It's good.
here we are today.
Thanks.
We are doing the 18th Brumaire of Louis de Bonaparte, as everybody knows. Chapter 6, the victory of Bonaparte. Like, there's actually quite a lot of really good analysis in this, even if we know what's happening. So I think, Kyle, I like starting with you. Will we take a good lump to start with? Let's see how far we can go to kick us off. I'm just looking at my... let me see where it's. Oh Christ! Is that too much to do in one go? Maybe it is. Let's go as far as there for now.
Kings of France.
Yeah, let's try that.
All right. Okay. The coalition with the Montaigne and the pure Republicans, to which the Party of Order saw itself condemned in its unavailing efforts to maintain possession of the military power and to reconquer supreme control of the executive power, proved incontrovertibly that it had forfeited its independent parliamentary majority. On May 28th, the mere power of the calendar, of the hour hand of the clock, gave the signal for its complete disintegration. With May 28th, the last year of the life of the National Assembly began. It now had to decide for continuing the Constitution unaltered or for revising it. But revision of the Constitution, that implied not only rule of the bourgeoisie or of the petty bourgeois democracy, democracy or proletarian anarchy, parliamentary republic or Bonaparte. It implied at the same time Orléans or Bourbon. Thus fell in the midst of Parliament the apple of discord that was bound to inflame openly the conflict of interests which split the Party of Order into hostile factions. The Party of Order was a combination of heterogeneous social substances. The question of revision generated a political temperature at which the product again decomposed into its original components. The Bonapartists' interest in a revision was simple. For them, it was above all a question of abolishing Article 45, which forbade Bonaparte's re-election and the prolongation of his authority. No less simple appeared the position of the Republicans. They unconditionally rejected any revision. They saw in it a universal conspiracy against the Republic. Since they commanded more than a quarter of the votes in the National Assembly, and according to the Constitution, 3/4 of the votes were required for a resolution for revision to be legally valid and for the convocation of a revising assembly, they needed only to count their votes to be sure of victory, and they were sure of victory. As against these clear positions, the Party of Order found itself inextricably caught in contradictions. If it should reject revision, it would imperil the status quo, since it would leave Bonaparte only one way out, that of force. And since on the second Sunday in May 1852, at the decisive moment, it would be surrendering France to revolutionary anarchy with a president who had lost his authority, with a parliament which for a long time had not possessed it, and with a people that meant to reconquer it. If it voted for constitutional revision, it knew that it voted in vain, and would be bound to fail constitutionally because of the Republicans' veto. If it unconstitutionally declared a simple majority vote to be binding, it could hope to dominate the revolution only if it subordinated itself unconditionally to the sovereignty of the executive power. Then it would make Bonaparte master of the Constitution, of its revision, and of the party itself. A partial revision, which would prolong the authority of the president, would pave the way for imperial usurpation. A general revision, which would shorten the existence of the republic, would bring the dynastic claims into unavoidable conflict, for the conditions of a Bourbon and an Orleanist restoration were not only different, they were mutually exclusive. The parliamentary republic was more than the neutral territory on which the two factions of the French bourgeoisie, Legitimists and Orleanists, large landed property and industry, could dwell side by side with equality of rights. It was the unavoidable condition of their common rule, the sole form of state in which their general class interest subjected to itself at the same time both the claims of their particular factions and all the remaining classes of society. As royalists, they fell back into their old antagonisms, into the struggle for the supremacy of landed property or of money. And the highest expression of this antagonism, its personification, was the kings themselves, their dynasties. Hence, the resistance of the party of order to the recall of the Bourbon. The Orleanist and people's representative Creton had in 1849, 1850, and 1851 periodically introduced a motion for the revocation of the decree exiling the royal families. Just as regularly, Parliament presented the spectacle of an assembly of royalists that obdurately barred the gates through which their exiled kings might return home. Richard III murdered Henry VI, remarking that he was too good for this world and belonged in heaven. The royalists declared France too bad to possess her kings again. Constrained by force of circumstances, they had become republicans and repeatedly sanctioned the popular decision that banished their kings from France.
Oh boy.
What a bunch of contradictions.
Okay, this is the first time we've read this, and it feels really narrating-y. You have two factions of the party of order squabbling over each other, got lining up behind something that they would have never supported before. You've got a executive figure that's yeah, maybe I will recognize elections, maybe I won't.
Yeah, I just have a marginal note that says CF, the US Republican Party.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. When you say CF, you mean what?
Cross-reference.
Ah, yes.
I can't help but think of the two factions of the party of order to be the existing halves of the one-party, two-party state.
Yeah.
Mm.
But
absolutely, there is that sense, because if in fact Trump does refuse to acknowledge election results, there will be some kind of constitutional revision that is required.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed, if not in writing.
Why would it make any difference? Because if he didn't, it would be unconstitutional anyway, wouldn't it?
Right, but because of an amendment after FDR's presidency, so yeah.
But couldn't you just be well, that's just a piece of paper. I don't care.
You'd have the security state basically eat him. A good portion of the security state would turn against him, physically.
Yeah, that would be the required action.
Well,
and what
he might be able to get away with it, just being okay, well, I'm just gonna go again. I don't care about this piece of paper. And
I mean, American civic religion, Puya. You haven't been out of the country that long.
I really.
Maybe maybe people would be really upset, but it could totally just happen. I feel like he doesn't need to revise the Constitution. He can just be okay, I don't even care about the Constitution.
I feel it would definitely be unpopular, but the thing is more not so much whether it be unpopular or not, but would he be able to do it? Could he actually if he had 40,000 fucking Borderland security police fucking wind up in Washington, and he says, I'm doing this, and they surround his, like, as in, like, you could have, I don't know. It's a kind of a wacky scenario. I don't think it's very realistic.
It's a wacky scenario. You would have a QAnon, like you would have the QAnon factions of, the executive at civil war with the, constitutional loyalist factions. And it would be interesting times.
I don't see it happening unless something very traumatic happens before that point.
Right. Like an enormous spike in pandemic.
No, I think more so. I think it would have to be like some kind of a
threat to the
some
order.
kind of a massacre or something to justify that type of a behavior.
No, I feel like it could be the protest.
The soldiers in America are all sworn to defend the Constitution. They've made an oath. There's a clear justification for them acting in that situation. Like, I'm not saying that binds them to that course of action, in fact, but the justification is clearly there. I don't care if you have a bunch of DHS people defending you. Like, it just seems very unlikely he'd be able to hold on to power.
Yeah,
I think you'd see a pig civil war, honestly.
Well, we don't like that's one way of defunding them.
Well, I don't know if it could successfully happen, but I feel like there's a possibility it could successfully happen. I feel like the chances that it could successfully happen are like non-zero. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think they're not zero, but they're not. I wouldn't say they're above 1% currently.
Well, I feel like I think it was Kyle. Like, he made a good point that the military and the security state, I don't think it would fly with a lot of them, and so I think that would be the big deciding factor in whether or not it would successfully happen. But I also feel like it's probably I feel like he has a good chance of winning just because there's no real opposition.
I mean, a skeleton of a human being might be able to beat him at this point, and that is who is running against him. So, I'm going to say something off-brand. I think we might be being too Nietzschean in using history for life. Maybe we should get lost in history for a bit and take this on its own terms. It is a bit too resonant to ignore. Maybe we can put it aside and come back to it later.
Yeah, because again, the everything in the surrounding situation is different. These royalist factions are facing down the prospect of anarchy, but the actual street fighting, the resistance of the people in the street has been completely suppressed at this point in French history, right? The security state has actually shut up the popular opposition in the streets. That is not the case in America. It is a very different situation.
Well, I think they're trying to. I think the Democratic Party just assumed they'll be able to fold it all into the Democratic Party. That's my honest belief.
Yeah, but that sure as shit wasn't what the Party of Order was thinking.
Yeah, absolutely.
In French history at this point, it's a different situation.
Oh, completely different. Yeah, and I think the Democrats now are wrong if they think they're just going to do an Iraq War demonstration on it and fold it into Obama. I just don't think that can happen. I think it's a totally different scenario. But what I like most about this chapter is that how he basically explains to us, how the contradictions inherent in these political positions have to are in the process of breaking apart and tearing, say, the current system apart. I think there's a lot for us to learn from his analysis of how these contradictions move and behave that when we look to, say, the current situation?
Yeah, I think, the thing that's really that in reading the section on the party of order here, the thing I'm reminded of the most is kind of like actually game theory, right? Like Marx is sort of working out the payoff matrix for the party of order and its constituent factions.
Yeah, precisely. It's like it's actually it's closer to game theory than, say, chess. It's more like an actual solving of a poker fucking situation than chess. He's looking at the expected return from all these outcomes and what they are supposed to do, in a kind of a monetary expected return scenario. It feels more like that than it does feel about strategy.
Naughty, naughty. We sound like analytical Marxists. Shudder to think. But yeah, obviously he's laying out the balance of forces and entertaining a sort of, I don't know, proto-formalization. It's not exactly von Neumann, analysis here, but you can see how that would be useful in formalizing what Marx is saying. If nobody has done that yet, there's your ticket.
I really like this line he has here about Richard III. This is a killer of a line. Richard III murdered Henry VI, remarking that he was too good for this world and belonged in heaven. The royalists declared France too bad to possess her kings again.
So good. So good.
Yeah.
You naughty, naughty French. You cannot have us. Not until you're better.
Yeah, you don't deserve us.
Yeah, my God. He has a line. Is there anything else we want to pick out of this before we go on to the next bit? Because it's going to play itself out now soon.
Yeah, I just want to draw attention to the Shakespearean tragedy of the party of order breaking bread just to completely fold in on itself. The Legitimists and Orleanists, making common cause, trying to, sort out their differences and completely neutralizing themselves in the process.
Yeah, I feel like there would be a good costume drama in the last days. In the last days of the Party of Order.
Ooh, like a Fall of Eagles kind of deal.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I was thinking like some of those sort of like mid 20th century costume dramas about like royal houses falling apart.
Cromwell with Richard Harris or something. You could have. You'd have to have John Malkovich in there as well. Who would he play?
Oh, yeah. Just get Patrick Stewart as Napoleon III.
That could work. I was thinking about that. What's that kind of really small...
No. Patrick Stewart would have to play de Tocqueville, right?
Yeah, I guess he's a character with more gravitas. Yeah.
Okay.
Just saying, he made a good Lenin in Fall of Eagles, so he's got Bonapartist cred.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, we're going to move on here, I think. We've got a very large section here to kind of consume in one go. Let me check for French words here.
You thinking of handing it to me?
I am, yeah. There's nothing really here. If you can say Venice and Clermont, you're pretty much good to go. Oh, no. There's Berryer, Benoit d'Azy, Saint-Priest. You should be able to handle them. Guizot, Duchactel.
All right. I've been taking some Duolingo, and let's see how it paid off. In Spanish, but yeah, it's a live emission. So, okay. It's a Romance language. How different can they be? White people all sound the same. Okay. A revision of the Constitution and circumstances compelled taking that into consideration called into question, along with the Republic, the common rule of the two bourgeois factions, and revived, with the possibility of a monarchy, the rivalry of the interests which the monarchy had predominantly represented by turns. the struggle for supremacy of one faction over the other. The diplomats of the Party of Order believed that they could settle the struggle by an amalgamation of the two dynasties, by a so-called fusion of the royalist parties and their royal houses. The real fusion of the Restoration and the July monarchy was the parliamentary republic, in which the Orleanist and Legitimist colors were obliterated, and the various species of bourgeois disappeared into the bourgeois as such, the bourgeois genus. Now, however, Orleanist was to become Legitimist, and Legitimist Orleanist. Royalty, in which their antagonism was personified, was to embody their unity. The expression of their exclusive factional interests was to become the expression of their common class interests. The monarchy was to do what only the abolition of two monarchies, the Republic, could do and had done. It was the philosopher's stone to produce which the doctors of the Party of Order racked their brains. As if the legitimist monarchy could ever become the monarchy of the industrial bourgeois, or the bourgeois monarchy ever become the monarchy of the hereditary landed aristocracy. As if landed property and industry could fraternize under one crown, when the crown could descend to only one head, the head of the elder brother or of the younger. As if industry could come to terms with landed property at all, so long as landed property itself does not decide to become industrial. If Henry V should die tomorrow, the Count of Paris would not on that account become the king of the Legitimists unless he ceased to be the king of the Orleanists. The philosophers of fusion, however, who became more vociferous in proportion as the question of revision came to the fore, who had provided themselves with an official daily organ in the Assemblée Nationale, and who are again at work even at this very moment, February 1852, considered the whole difficulty to be to the opposition and rivalry of the two dynasties. The attempts to reconcile the Orleans family with Henry V.
Sorry, Lexi, it was just there. It was considered the whole difficulty to be due to the opposition.
Oh yeah, sure. Considered the whole, and you can cut the part where you correct my name wrong as well. Considered that's fine. You're gonna cut it anyway, right? That's cool. Considered the whole difficulty to be due to the opposition and rivalry of the two dynasties. The attempts to reconcile the Orleans family with Henry V, begun since the death of Louis Philippe, but like the dynastic intrigues generally, played out only while the National Assembly was in recess. During the entr'actes, behind the scenes. During the entr'actes behind the scenes, sentimental coquetry. I love that word. Sentimental coquetry with the old superstition. Is it coquetry? Anyway, I'm just caught up on this word. Sentimental coquetry with the old superstition rather than seriously meant business now became grand performances of state, enacted by the Party of Order on the public stage instead of in amateur theatricals as before. The courier spread from Paris to Venice, from Venice to Clermont, from Clermont to Paris. The Count of Chambord issues a manifesto in which, with the help of all the members of his family, he announces not his, but the national restoration. The Orleanist Salvindy throws himself at the feet of Henry V. The legitimist chiefs, Brumaire, is that like a cheese, Brumaire? Anyway, do you roll the R? How do you, Kyle, give me a French check here. How's that? Brumaire?
I think it's Barrier.
Okay. Barrier, Benoit d'Azy, Saint-Priest traveled to Clermont to persuade the Orleans set, but in vain. The fusionists perceived too late that the interests of the two bourgeois factions neither lose exclusiveness nor gain pliancy when they become accentuated in the form of family interests, the interests of two royal houses. If Henry V were to recognize the Count of Paris as his heir, the sole success that the fusion could achieve at best, the House of Orleans would not win any claim that the childlessness of Henry V had not already secured to it. but it would lose all the claims it had gained through the July Revolution. It would waive its original claims, all the titles it had wrested from the older branch of the Bourbons in almost 100 years of struggle. It would barter away its historical prerogative, the prerogative of the modern kingdom, for the prerogative of its genealogical tree. The fusion, therefore, would be nothing but a voluntary abdication of the House of Orleans, its resignation to legitimacy, repentant withdrawal from the Protestant state church into the Catholic. A withdrawal, however, that would not even bring to it the throne it had lost, but to the steps of the throne where it had been born. The old Orleanist ministers, Guizot, Duchâtel, etc., who likewise hastened to Clermont to advocate the fusion, in fact, represented merely the Katzenjammer over the July Revolution. The despair about the bourgeois kingdom and the kingliness of the bourgeois, the superstitious belief in legitimacy as the last charm against anarchy. Imagining themselves mediators between Orleans and Bourbons, they were in reality merely Orleanist renegades, and the Prince of Joinville, okay, and the Prince of
Joinville, I think.
Joinville, all right. I'm just throwing some was in there because, you know.
So that is Louis Philippe's son. So that's who.
Got it.
Joinville is.
Okay, and the Prince of Joinville, Louis Philippe's son, received them as such. On the other hand, the viable bellicose section of the Orleanists, Thiers, Bazet, etc., convinced Louis Philippe's family all the more easily that if any directly monarchist restoration presupposed the fusion of the two dynasties, and if any such fusion presupposed abdication of the House of Orleans, it was, on the contrary, wholly in accord with the tradition of their forefathers to recognize the Republic for the moment and wait until events permitted the conversion of the presidential chair into a throne. Rumors of Joinville's candidature were circulated. Public curiosity was kept in suspense, and a few months later, in September, after the rejection of revision, his candidature was publicly proclaimed. The attempt at a royalist fusion of Orleanists with Legitimists had thus not only failed, it had destroyed their parliamentary fusion, their common republican form, and had broken up the party of order into its original component parts. But the more the estrangement between Clermont and Venice grew, the more their settlement collapsed and the Joinville agitation gained ground. So much the more eager and earnest became the negotiations between Bonaparte's minister Faucher and the Legitimists. Can I get a womp womp?
Womp womp. Like, that's a long, good reading there, Lexi. Or Esri, God damn it. I had nearly...
It's okay. You almost got it. It's my previous host. It's my previous host. There was a contract negotiation, went sour, got a new host.
Goddamn Ferengis. You should have hired the Ferengis.
Yeah.
Okay, what am I doing here? Sorry, I'm after losing my thing. Okay, yeah, so like the whole game, they tried to join together forces to get a unified royal house in order, or a unified line. And the actual fact of trying to join them laid bare how split they truly were. And there was no joining these two. One group wanted to say to, one group of Orleanists said to, Louis Philippe's son, well, let the other guy be king first, and then you can have your go next. And that was basically putting them straight back to where they always would have been, a secondary royal family. And then the other group basically said, no, here's what you should do. You should just run for president. And then in proper French fashion of political mess-ups, they'll probably see, they might just make you actually king again after a while, and you can bide your time as president.
Yeah, that's the kind of implication, isn't it? That Joinville's candidature, they're just like, yeah, and then you'll probably just end up, making that move anyway. So there's almost like an implied Bonapartism in that route anyway.
Yes. Yeah, it's like instead of emperor, it's king.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
God, and the sort of like, I don't know, what's the word? There's a sort of hubris that the Party of Order usually shows against like rising figures. First Bonaparte, then our turn, then they get like liquidated. I mean, it is sort of surprising that merging the monarchists in this way ends in their collapse. Like, if we're going to talk game theory again, you should be able to combine your forces and have a bigger block. Maybe let's get into why this dissolves their legitimacy, no pun intended.
As in, like, why this is a bad move? Like, why the Orleanists will not merge with the Bourbon?
Yeah.
It's because they have they represent different class interests. Like one is and they want to dominate over money, and then the other is money and they want to dominate over feudal. And he says that it's a great line in there where they basically said that the landed aristocracy would need to industrialize before they could have that merge.
So one thing I was just reflecting on in listening to this is how I guess fortunate the British monarchy was to not be split in the time of transition from basically feudalism into capitalism.
Right.
Yeah, hell of a lot of contingencies at play in England.
Yeah, like because obviously there are the Tories and the Whigs and so on, and they were split according to sort of town and country interests. But if you have this kind of cemented dynastic competition between those factions, in a situation of like high political indeterminacy, it's very difficult to overcome when you have those class interests motivating the alternative candidacies for the throne.
Right.
Yeah, they had the War of the Roses, 200 years before the revolution, and it was dead by then. Like, just this kind of idea of two things that have the same, they don't have the same actual material class interests, but similar class interests being unable to unite. It does strike me as like the kind of classic split of the revolutionary left of anarchists and Marxists. It does ring some kind of warning bells to me.
Interesting. The thing that comes to mind for me is, well, first of all, as an American, when you have basically both parties are just a big coalition of like hodgepodge of different kinds of class interests. And yeah, it's mostly like big bourgeois, but then there's like, rentier landlords that are, I mean, they are behaving like capitalists, but not exactly like industrialists or whatever. But then on the other hand, there's the legacy of the Civil War and the falling apart of a sort of class compromise between industrial bourgeoisie and a sort of pseudo aristocratic slaveholder class. So depending on what moment in American history you're kind of centering, you can get Marx's point here that like that their class interests are just way too different for them to actually merge, even though they have some similarities in political form, let alone the cultural differences of, Protestant versus Catholic and, which monarchy you stand.
Right. And I guess in the case of Britain, now correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm kind of fuzzy on this part of history, but like with the ascension of the House of Orange to the throne, the Glorious Restoration, that kind of dynastic competition was kind of put an end to. Is that correct?
James, as a resident UK person, what do you think?
I think pretty much, because that's at the end of the Glorious Revolution, right?
It's the end of the Civil War, the restoration of the monarchy under the House of Orange, who comes over from Holland as basically a pro-bourgeois king.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair enough. I'm not super down with that period of history, to be honest.
Yeah. Anyway, it's just interesting to think about what would have happened in Britain, even if they didn't have a republic, if you had competing houses in a much more serious way. It might have been a different history.
One thing that is interesting, picking up on what Tom said about how they kind of disintegrate, and there are, in the disintegration, the two competing and antagonistic kind of, the legitimists representing the kind of landlord class and the Orleanists representing kind of finance capital and the industrialists, kind of that stark binary is kind of, made apparent. But later on, kind of reading into Orleanism, as you get into the 1880s, they tried this fusionism again, and it did stick. So I've not read into it far enough, but it's interesting that there must have been kind of in the intervening period between the 1850s and the 1880s, because later on in this chapter, Marx goes into kind of great depth about the kind of the wider political economy and the context that brings about this moment. But something must have shifted between 1850 and 1880 to allow those two factions to ally. Yeah, go ahead, Carl. Sorry.
You have the Second Empire, right? And the ascension of finance capital, the sort of Saint Simonian use of the state to promote capitalist development. There's a big economic shift in France that happens under Bonaparte. And so that's probably what actually made the merger possible.
Yeah, that would certainly follow from Marx's analysis. That would be the key difference.
Yeah.
Did anybody see there about a month ago on Twitter when in, I think, Kentucky, Louisville, they knocked over like the statue of King Louis and his direct descendant? I think they're the Bourbon. I think their legitimate descendant was on Twitter saying, "This is an outrage. My great grandfather would be saddened to see this day."
Thanks for giving us some Schadenfreude from the grave, I guess, It's just like when Mussolini's granddaughter weighed in on the soccer shit. I'm sorry, football.
Yeah, but boy did he get roasted, It's one thing was
that's amazing.
Memory, but fucking Louis the fucking 14th, great grandson, giving fucking shade. Black Lives Matter was fucking unique.
Yeah, guy must have a humiliation kink to trot that out on Twitter.
It's hilarious.
I think he's got fucking 40,000 followers, probably all weirdos. Maybe not 40, 17,000 followers, yeah.
Monarchists that ever they're all monarchists, I swear.
Lost cause. I need something dead to stand. This is a really shitty one, but it's mine. I'm picking it up. Yeah. Let's follow the great distant, relative of Louis the 14th or whatever. Oh my God. I don't know. Sometimes I think, we're some of us are nuts for standing something from 100 years ago or 50 years ago. Then you hear about these guys, makes me feel the teensiest a little bit better.
Yeah, they just need some good daddy marks. Let's get honest here, right?
I mean, yeah. At least you got a stipend in the USSR to go to university.
Oh, here we go again.
At least you got a stipend.
And look, Napoleon gave you sausages. Yeah, maybe Daddy G will throw some sausages at you for doing physics or something for you.
Okay, James, how do you feel about reading this long bit here?
Yeah, man, this is good. This is the bit with the disintegration, the decomposition, and the dry infusoria. Yeah, I remember this.
It sounds like something from like, what's that American cop show where they have all the forensics and the crap science? Was it
CSI?
CSI. It sounds like James is like talking about CSI Miami Beach or something here.
Okay, right. I have at it. The disintegration of the Party of Order did not stop at its original elements. Each of the two great factions, in its turn, decomposed all over again. It was as if all the old shadings that had formerly fought and jostled one another within each of the two circles, whether legitimist or Orleanist, had thawed out again like dry infusoria on contact with water, as if they had acquired anew sufficient vital energy to form groups of their own and independent antagonisms. The legitimists dreamed they were back among the controversies between the Tuileries and the Pavillon Marsan, between Villers and Polignac. The Orleanists relived the golden days of the tourney between Guizot, Molay, Broglie, Thiers, and Odillon Barrot. The section of the Party of Order that was eager for revision, but was divided again on the limits to revisions, a section composed of the legitimists led by Barrière and Falloux on the one hand, and by La Roche-Jacquelat on the other, and of the conflict-wary Orleanists led by Molay, Broglie, Montalembert, and Odillon Barrot, agreed with the Bonapartist representatives on the following indefinite and broadly framed motion. With the object of restoring to the nation the full exercise of its sovereignty, the undersigned representatives moved that the Constitution be revised. At the same time, however, they unanimously declared, through their reporter Tocqueville, there he is, that the National Assembly had no right to move the abolition of the Republic, that this right was vested solely in the revising chamber. For the rest, the Constitution might be revised, only in a quote-unquote legal manner. Hence, only if the constitutionally prescribed 3/4 of the number of votes were cast in favour of revision. On July 19th, after 6 days of stormy debate, revision was rejected, as was to be anticipated. 446 votes were cast for it, but 278 against. The extreme Orleanists, Thiers, Changranier, etc., voted with the Republicans and the Montagne. Thus, the majority of Parliament declared against the Constitution, but this Constitution itself declared for the majority, and that its vote was binding. But,
Declared for the minority.
Oh, the minority, I'm sorry. And that its vote was binding. But had not the Party of Order subordinated the Constitution to the parliamentary majority on May 31st, 1850, and on June 13th, 1849? Up to now, was not its whole policy based on the subordination of the paragraphs of the Constitution to the decisions of the parliamentary majority? Had it not left to the Democrats the antediluvian superstitions, belief in the letter of the law, and castigated the Democrats for it? At the present moment, however, revision of the Constitution meant nothing but continuation of the presidential authority, just as the continuation of the Constitution meant nothing but Bonaparte's deposition. Parliament had declared for him, but the Constitution declared against Parliament. He had therefore acted in the sense of Parliament when he tore up the Constitution, and acted in the sense of the Constitution when he adjourned Parliament. Boom.
That is a fucking great line again. I want to read that one again. Let me read this in here. He therefore acted in the sense of Parliament when he tore up the Constitution, and acted in the sense of the Constitution when he adjourned the Parliament. That is a hell of an analytical statement.
Yeah, I have in my physical copy, it's the wording is slightly changed, and I like it. It says, therefore he carried out the will of Parliament when he tore up the Constitution, and he carried out the will of the Constitution when he sent Parliament packing.
That's a very English way of putting it, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an English guy who did the translation. This is the Terrell Carver one, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this stuff is amazing. I really like this stuff.
Yeah. For a long time, when people said dialectical, I thought they just meant writing like that because it sounds like neat, and sometimes it fits the content. Because in this case, like it's a pretty sick burn, and it's like a nice poetic line. if you know, I don't know if you're familiar with like underground hip hop from the '90s. They do this stuff a lot.
Mm,
I didn't
nice.
realize backpackers were so dialectical.
You know, you've got to take some joy, some glee in the catastrophic fuck ups of these assholes and their the ways in which they tie themselves in knots, the ways in which their prior actions go on to sabotage them later on. Because ultimately, you know, the proletariat lost this fight, and so it's good to have some, you know, Schadenfreude at all these pieces of shit.
Yeah, it's like, you know, it's like squabbles between the elite, isn't it? And it's nice to see some of them just being so inept that they got from a position of power, they got their ass handed by a kind of a moron. You know, like,
yeah, heirs to the throne usurped by this fucking fail son. It's neat.
By a fail son who launched like a, you know, what was the one he did? I think he landed over somewhere like in Brittany with like English or French people that were living in England, exiles, and like they all got arrested in about like an hour or something.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So it's kind of interesting, like if we look to say what's going on in the States right now, and you look at, say, you know, this kind of idea we have here as like the legitimists as and Orleanists as Democrats and Republicans. I do feel that that they really would combine and do always in the name of capital, much more so. They're less split, amazingly less split than, say, this party of order. They're more functional for capital. They're functional for capital.
There's also something about the bourgeois republic in America that gives them a stronger common cause, right? Because essentially they can both commit to the idea that, well, you know, after the other party gets in power, we'll have our turn. And that's just kind of how things go, because neither of them have that much, you know, popularity. Neither of them are really interested in that much popularity. And it's just going to kind of go back and forth. And that is not the case with monarchy, right? With monarchy, if the legitimist line was ceded to the throne, the republic was abolished, and the legitimists had a son, and then the Orleanists would just be reduced to a cadet house, and that would be that, and they would have to be back to maybe, you know, a century of scheming as opposed to a decade or something.
Well, they probably would have to end it up like on the equivalent of Jeffrey Epstein Island, like poor old Prince
God.
Prince Andrew was. That's probably, you know, no one wasn't given that.
I mean, you could have just, you know, got their heirs together and go, now kids, like they used to do with the old royal houses. But yeah, let's go for the Jeffrey Epstein one.
The Epsteinist line.
Oh, God. Jesus Christ.
Prince Andrew and the Epsteinist faction.
You know, I feel like all socialist podcasts are going asymptotically towards QAnon.
Yeah, what do you call it? Like, do you remember the Royals went against the Sun and the News of the World in the UK about tapping their phones? The journalists were tapping their mobile phones and reading their messages, and it was a big thing where they got Rupert Murdoch had to go in front of a committee.
Yeah.
And since then, Murdochs have hated the royal family, and they managed to get their hands on.
Yeah, that's why the Sun have really been covering the Prince Andrew stuff.
That's
It's clearly,
yeah.
it's clearly a result.
Wow.
It's clearly a result of Leveson and Murdoch basically still like being super pissed off about that. Yeah.
Do you remember about a year after that they managed to get their hands? No one ever said how they got it, but I reckon there was I don't know, because there was only supposed to be one copy of it apparently, of the Queen doing Nazi salutes when she was a kid, and the Queen mother.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, and the Sun ran with it on the front page about a year.
Wow.
And I think they reckon that they actually got them to break into fucking the palace. I think I remember reading something, probably some bullshit. But that was state secret, and they got it out on the front page of the fucking Sun.
I mean, like Prince, what's the fuck? The whatever his name is. I'm sure he does Nazi salutes all the time. But like the Queen, now that's a scoop. It's the Sun that won it.
Like Queen Mother and the Queen, and like the Queen is like 7 or 8 or whatever.
Yeah,
and
I remember that.
Is like 40, and she's like giving up. They're doing it, and they're smiling, and you can see they're obviously fucking well for it. It was from about 1937 or 6 or something like this. So before the war.
Oh, okay.
But it showed where they're planning.
Yeah.
If you Google it, there is the picture online, and the front line of the Sun that day is their Royal Highness.
Yeah.
That's an awful pun.
It's pretty good. I like that.
That's about the level of humor I would expect from the tabloid press.
Yeah, that's like complete, dead standard stock in trade for the Sun.
Yeah. But you want to workshop that one in the writer's room for a little bit, like.
No, this is like they're like got him. This is what the writers' room were thinking when they published that.
Yeah, they're like, just rush to press. Like, no need to workshop this in my DMs. Like a 16-year-old on Twitter, the average one could come with a better pun than that. Is putting more thought into it. But I guess if you have the content, you don't have to workshop it. Tom, use your screen for good, and please Google and or Bing image search that Queen Heil.
There's a picture of it on the BBC website, and Buckingham Palace's comment was they were quote unquote disappointed at the usage.
Yeah, that's right.
Classic,
and the royalists
British understatement.
There we go. There we go.
This is
happy family.
Mein Gott.
I think there's more than one as well. There's definitely one of the Queen Mother. I remember seeing it. Like, it's actually from a video. There's like, I think, is that the Queen Mother there? Is that the Queen Mother? That's the Queen there, I think. But
far more recently than this, there's Prince Harry in like full brown shirt regalia at a house party.
And there's
it's okay. Prince Harry is woke now. It's fine. It's fine.
all is
cool.
forgiven.
He's really progressive. He's saying profits over people now. I'm sorry. He's saying people over profits now. It's fine. Hitler would never say that.
Well, he's exiled himself from the royal house, and he's gone to fucking Hollywood.
That's true. He's gone
Republican now.
Yeah. He's in bourgeois royalty now. Hop from one tabloid to the other.
This is the start of the Orleanist house. In the British, we've got the bourgeois king in the making in Prince Harry.
I don't know if anybody can see this one. Like, this is my missus is...
Okay, Tom. Okay.
God damn it, Tom.
Okay, Tom.
My missus is friend, this guy, Rob Waugh, she's really good friends with him. And he made a career. He literally made a career working for the Metro in London of doing articles with puns on the word Uranus. He would look up scientific articles.
Oh my God.
Hubble just spotted something massive coming out of Uranus. There's another one. Uranus gapes open wide and emits hot gases. He had like
wow.
newspaper for like 3 years. He had every single one of them. They were all.
Yeah, do us a favor. Do us a favor and don't Google that one. Jesus Christ. You'll get banned from YouTube.
That's like the best job I could ever imagine. Just googling up scientific articles about Uranus.
Puya,
Hang on. We're all a bunch of suckers, we could just be having, pun-based income, and instead we're doing deep reads of, the 18th Brumaire. What the hell's wrong with us?
What is fucking wrong with this?
Puya, Daddy G is not gonna let that stuff slide.
No, he's probably not gonna.
Yeah.
The Party of Order will have no slighting of the planet Uranus.
Yeah. That's right.
No, they're probably not gonna bankroll me for that.
Yeah, it has been, as we all know from Futurama, it has been rationally renamed to avoid such jokes to your rectum.
Yeah, rectum nearly killed him. Now, that was one of my favorite jokes when I was in my younger days. So there was anytime somebody say rectum, yeah, I nearly killed him. Okay, so what was I going to say? But they actually employed another guy after he left there and he went to work somewhere else, and they employed him, and his puns are really crap. They have him still on the Uranus pun train. Okay.
Let's just be grateful Marx is better with the pen than these motherfuckers. Jesus Christ.
Okay, let's keep going. Okay, so while all this was going on and all the revision stuff was being debated in Parliament, Bonaparte went in and he got rid of General Barraquet Dilliers, who'd been basically totally against him, and he put him in his place a loyalist for Bonaparte. So we're going to skip that paragraph there because I don't want to read absolutely everything because we are fucking reading lots of stuff here. But I'll give this bit a go. Let me just see how far I'll go down here. Okay. There's some great shit here. Actually, I'm going to read a good lot. He quotes the
Economist.
The Economist here. Maybe I'll break it up. It's quite long.
Lovely.
Man, The Economist still fucking
Economist.
200 years ago.
Never saw a Bonapartist they didn't love.
Yeah.
Right.
Unless they're called Hugo Chavez. Right. Right.
Fair. Right Bonapartist.
Correct.
Indeed.
Okay. The Party of Order proved by its decision on revision that it knew neither how to rule nor how to serve, neither how to live nor how to die, neither how to suffer the Republic nor how to overthrow it, neither how to uphold the Constitution nor how to throw it overboard, neither how to cooperate with the President nor how to break with him. To whom then did it look for the solution of all the contradictions? To the calendar, to the course of events. It ceased to presume to sway them. It therefore challenged events to assume sway over it, and thereby challenged the power to which, in the struggle against the people, it had surrendered one attribute after another, until it stood impotent before this power. In order that the head of the executive power might be able to more undisturbedly to draw up his plan of campaign against it, strengthen his means of attack, select his tools, and fortify his positions, it resolved precisely at this critical moment to retire from the stage and adjourn for 3 months from August 4th to November 4th. Yet again, they've done this so many goddamn times. Did they not learn from their mistakes? God damn it. The parliamentary... Why am I saying God damn it? I'm glad they learned. The parliamentary party was not only dissolved into its two great factions. Each of these factions was not only split up within itself, but the Party of Order in Parliament had fallen out with the Party of Order outside Parliament. The spokesmen and scribes of the bourgeoisie, its platform and its press, in short, the ideologists of the bourgeoisie and the bourgeoisie itself, and the represented in short, the ideologists of the bourgeoisie and the bourgeoisie itself, the representatives and the represented, faced one another in estrangement and no longer understood one another. The legitimists in the provinces, with their limited horizon and unlimited enthusiasm, accused their parliamentary leaders, Berryer and Falloux, of deserting to the Bonapartist camp and of defection from Henry V. Their fleur-de-lis minds believed in the fall of man, but not in diplomacy. Far more fateful and decisive was the breach of the commercial bourgeoisie with its politicians. It reproached them not as the legitimists reproached theirs, with having abandoned their principles, but on the contrary, with clinging to principles that had become useless. I'm going to keep going here because this stuff is too fucking good to stop. Let me just go here to this part. I indicated above that since Foule's entry into the ministry, the section of the commercial bourgeoisie which had held the lion's share of power under Louis Philippe, namely the aristocracy of finance, had become Bonapartist. Foule not only represented Bonaparte's interest in the Bourse, he represented at the same time the interests of the Bourse before Bonaparte. The position of the aristocracy of finance is most strikingly depicted in a passage from its European organ, the London Economist. In the issue of February the 1st, 1851, its Paris correspondent writes, "Now we have it stated from numerous quarters that above all things France demands tranquility. The President declares it in his message to the Legislative Assembly. It is echoed from the Tribune. It is asserted in the journals. It is announced from the pulpit. It is demonstrated by the sensitiveness of the public." Am I saying that correctly?
Sensitiveness.
Yeah.
Yeah, God, it's a word. I don't know. Is that word in use anymore? The sensitiveness.
Sensitivity, that you would usually use as a noun anyway. Weird translation, or I guess weird English. Fucking economist, get it together.
Demonstrated by the Say it again.
Sensitiveness.
Okay. Demonstrated by the sensitiveness of the public funds at the least prospect of disturbance, and their firmness the instant it is made manifest that the executive is victorious. In its issue of November 29, 1851, the Economist declares in its own name, "The President is a guardian of order and is now recognized as such in every exchange, on every stock exchange of Europe."
Yeah. So sometimes when you read like 20th century political economy on fascism, you see them really harping on the aristocracy of finance and their role in Bonapartism. Now, you might think that's wrong, you might think that's right, but the point is, that's coming from Marx. And at least in Marx's day, he could flex with some economist quotes to back him up.
Yeah, and in France at the time, was it an anti-Semitic trope? Do you think was in France was the Jewish community heavily in the banking? I don't know. I don't know. Is that what you're getting at, Lexi? Esri?
That wasn't what I was getting at necessarily, but I think that's a good point. There might be something to the way that finance capital is a bit more, how shall we say, enterprising in the sorts of things that it will back, no risk, no reward, in order to make the world safe for capital. But I don't know. Sometimes financiers could be more split on these things. I don't actually know the class breakdown during this period of history. So but Marx has a point throughout here that the aristocracy of finance, which if you think about it, is sort of a weird word. I think it's more literal it's a weird phrase. I think it's more literal in France than it would be in the United States, for instance. But yeah, he's been fairly consistent about this through the Brumaire. Listen, it may have been an anti-Semitic trope in France. It was certainly an anti-Semitic trope in Germany, where Marx is writing. But I think,
an aristocracy of finance.
No. See, that's the thing. There was an aristocracy of finance, and in France, I think that this was more actually related to not just new bourgeois that struck it rich, but was sort of Kyle, I think you might have explained that there was a literal, like, aristocratic connection with finance capital in France. So, taking on that premise, if that's the case, however structurally anti-Semitic, critiques of finance capital could be, in this situation, you have France is rather anti-Semitic, and so if you have their establishment figures crossing over into finance capital, it's you probably don't have a more anti-Semitic section of society that's actually being talked about.
So I'm not entirely sure on this, but I do think that the finance capital was associated with Protestants and also with Jews. So it was it wasn't a purely anti-Semitic thing, from what I remember about French history.
Well, isn't that explains, like what he talks about earlier on? I think we read where he says we're going to have to give up our Protestant church.
Yeah.
Right. Have I overstated the links between sort of older aristocracy and finance? Because that's certainly not the case in other places. Sometimes Marx and Engels will use aristocracy in a less literal sense. I think that comes out of de Tocqueville kind of looking for new aristocrats in different places.
Yeah. I think it's, from what I understand, the biggest financiers in France were not necessarily from the nobility. Not to say that they didn't have nobles among them, but I think that the finance capital was fairly bourgeois. From what I understand.
All right. Cut my bullshitting, Tom. Yes, this is kind of anti-Semitic, but if you think about it, Marx is one of the even though there's a bunch of anti-Semitic shit that Marx said, Marx is still one of the least anti-Semitic socialists writing at the time.
Yeah, I wonder for Marx himself, I don't know, I've no idea, but when Irish people talk about Irish people, we talk about our potato heads, how we're all ugly and potato eating, muck savages. So I wonder if for Marx, was there some of that, the ability, it's like listening to Jewish comedians tell Jewish jokes. I wonder, is there some of that for Marx himself, or was he kind of anti-Semitic? You know what I mean?
It's complicated because he, was not writing for a Jewish audience, and, his father converted and his, family went to great lengths to present themselves as Christians. So it's more of an Adolf Reed, where you're sort of presenting a story for people that aren't your people that kind of cuts against your interests or something.
Yeah.
I did want to talk about that point about finance capital and fascism just briefly, because yes, we can find examples of it in The Economist here, but let's not forget the reaction of finance capital to the rise of Bolsonaro. That was overwhelmingly positive. Even the CBC News was like, yeah, this is the best. This is great. Speaking with the voice of finance capital there, Canadian finance capital.
And that is absolutely standard for all the, types of regime change in Latin America, at least going back to the 70s. If you look at the coverage and The Economist and that sort of thing. Making the world safe for, quote, democracy.
For about 10 years, I read, maybe not 10, but at least 5 years, I read every issue of The Economist, literally front to back, when I used to think it was an actual sensible magazine. It was literally some of the only semi-intellectual material I was ever exposed to at that stage on some of this stuff. And it was literally every week, depending on what country you're talking about, they made that exact point every single time. Yeah,
they
don't hide it. They do not hide it. It is explicit and
it is yeah. If it wasn't the case, earlier, it certainly is the case these days. No risk, no reward, baby.
Yeah, and
I think not that this is finance capital exactly, but I don't know. Elon Musk on Twitter recently tweeted, "We'll coup whoever we want."
yeah,
That's I feel like that's in keeping with the spirit here. You know, the real visionaries of the bourgeoisie.
yeah. I really like this. I want to read this part here again for people. I want people to think all about Joe Biden. Okay, let's go. To whom then did it look for the solution of all of for the solution of all the contradictions? To the calendar, to the course of events. It ceased to presume to sway them. It therefore challenged events to assume sway over it, and thereby challenged the power to which, in the struggle against the people, it had surrendered one attribute after another until it stood impotent before this power. There is something like, I find there's something going like what's going on in America now, where they just think this election in 4 months' time. Well, this will be what we need. It just seems like I don't know. This point really reminds me of current events. It's not exact, but it just reminds me. It rhymes.
The position of the Democrats is somewhat more rational, right? Because there's a reasonable chance that they will win the election. But yeah, I mean, it does seem like they may be relying overly much on the power of the calendar, because it seems like the election might be contested, in which case they're going to actually have to get into it, you know?
Would the Party of Order not win the election again, do people think? Because they still have a massive majority.
Are we lost in history, or are we being? Are we lifting this into the present now?
Well, I think the Party of Order actually was very unpopular at this point of time. So they didn't really have a strong chance of winning an election. Or that's correct, right? Like, nobody was really pro Party of Order.
Like, yeah, from what what Marx is what Marx is depicting here is how they kind of like destroyed their own fan base, and and how masterfully some chump like Napoleon III could, play off the different factions against each other and play off Parliament and the whole Republican legacy against each other.
Yeah, he says just a little bit further on that the industrial bourgeoisie too, and its fanaticism for order, was angered by the squabbles of the Parliamentary Party of Order. So yeah, it's this kind of the thirst for order is fracturing their relationship with their supposed parliamentary representation, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's go there then. Let's do a bit of reading. Puya, are you up for a bit of reading, or have you fallen asleep there?
Yeah, sure. Let me get the sentence.
Yeah.
Starting
the chat demands Puya move closer to the mic.
That is true.
Sorry.
Aristocracy of finance.
We just want more Puya.
Okay. The aristocracy of finance. Therefore, am I in the right spot?
Yeah, that's it. Two paragraphs there.
The aristocracy of finance, therefore, condemned the parliamentary struggle of the Party of Order with the executive power as a disturbance of order, and celebrated every victory of the president over its ostensible representative as a victory of order. By the aristocracy of finance must here be understood not merely as a great loan promoters and speculators in public funds, in regard to whom it is immediately obvious that their interests coincide with the interests of state power. All modern finance, the whole of the banking business, is interwoven in the closest fashion with public credit. A part of their business capital is necessarily invested and put out at interest in quickly convertible public funds. Their deposits, the capital placed at the disposal and distributed by them among the merchants and industrialists, are partly derived from the dividends of holders of government securities. If, in every epoch, the stability of the state power signified Moses and the prophets, to the entire money market and to the priests of this money market, why not all the more so today, when every deluge threatens to sweep away the old states and the old states' debts with them? The industrial bourgeoisie, too, in its fanaticism for order, was angered by the squabbles of the parliamentary party of order with the executive power. After their vote of January 18th on the occasion of Changarnier's dismissal, Thiers, Engels, Angles, Saint Beuve, etc., received from their constituents in precisely the industrial districts public reproofs in which their coalition with the Montaigne was especially scourged as high treason to order. If, as we have seen, boastful taunts and petty intrigues which marked the struggles of the party of order with the president merited no better reception, then on the other hand, this bourgeois party was required its representatives to allow the military power to pass from its own parliament to an adventurous pretender without offering resistance, was not even worth the intrigues that were squandered in its interest. It proved that the struggle to maintain public interest, in its own class interests, its political power, only troubled and upset it, as it distributed private business. With barely...
Can you
Sorry.
read that last sentence again? Yeah, there's a few mistakes in there. Go for the last sentence. It proved.
It proved that the struggle to maintain its public interest, its own class interests, its political power, only troubled and upset it, as it distributed private business.
Disturbed.
As it disturbed.
Disturbed.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying.
just say as it disturbed it.
As it disturbed private business.
Cool. Thanks.
So here we
should I
have it.
continue?
Oh, that's enough. That's enough there. So here we have it. We've had the aristocracy of finance had enough of them, and the industrialists had enough of them. So basically, they couldn't. They let the industrial bourgeoisie were like saying, "Look, you just let go. You gave the army over to Bonaparte. You're totally useless. Why should we do anything for you? Why should we put stock in what you guys are doing?" And there was a great line in here, which is, let me read this one line in here again. If in every epoch the stability of the state power signified Moses and the prophets to the entire money market and to the priests of this money market, why not all the more so today, when every deluge threatens to sweep away the old states and the old state debts with them? So
Moses, eh?
Yeah.
Anyway, what were you going to say, Tom?
Yeah. That's true. But the thing is here is like, we see that like every time like stuff would when Napoleon would do well, I don't know if we discovered it yet, we've read it yet, but or if we've just covered it in one of the previous bits where when the executive would basically win out over the parliament, stocks would go up, and every time he'd lose out, stocks would go down. And so what we're seeing here is that like it was the fact that if you kept the republic as a going concern now and the voting, and if you had the risk of the social democrats coming back, or even worse for the capitalists, you were basically risking all the existing state and the debts and all the money there and the structure of society. So they were bound to go against they were bound to back Napoleon if he was showing a much stronger ability to represent the interests of finance capital in this case, but all capital by the sounds of it.
Yeah, and Derek in the chat has an asterisk to our conversation about the section of capital. He says it's rentier capital, so it's finance capital being the biggest sector. So yeah, it's that chunk of capitalists, not exactly the industrialists, that are pushing this. The industrialists kind of have their own class faction.
They do, but they've decided to go along with what the finance capital is pushing because they're disgusted with the intrigues of the party border.
Yes, that's in the next paragraph, but yes, absolutely.
We just read that paragraph, the industrial bourgeoisie.
Yep. Yeah, we just
killing
read
me.
that, yeah.
All right, never mind. Yeah. Good point, Kyle. That's exactly what we just said. God damn it.
This can be confusing. I'm just recapping what Mark said.
I'm not editing that out. I'm just going to make you look like a total fool. Okay.
Good. You know that's what I would do, Tom. Leave in all the mistakes, cut out all the good points. That's how you keep a network together.
That's my kind of podcast. It's called what do I call it? Ritual humiliation.
From alpha to character assassination.
Yeah, from alpha to humiliation. All the way from A to H. Okay.
Don't Google that.
No. From alpha to humiliation. That's definitely going to throw me up some.
Isn't that what J.K. Rowling's been on about recently? Anyway.
Yeah. J.K. Rowling, oh my God, giving money. She gave loads of money to the Stop Scotland Being Independent cause. What a fucker. She is.
Oh my God.
Now
they might actually jam up Scotland independence with this. Anyway,
the cause of Scotland is the cause of trans folk everywhere. Apparently,
it's probably I wouldn't be far off. Like the two things that drives her mad are trans people and fucking Scottish independence. If you could somehow combine both of them and elect a trans president of fucking Scotland, her head would fucking explode. It would be fantastic.
Let's do it. 2021, things are going to turn around.
Yeah. I literally had a dream last night where I moved to Scotland and I was going to go to the city. I mean, what was the first thing I'm going to do when I go to Scotland? Find a nice Scottish trans girl.
Republic.
Well, I mean, sure. I was just thinking about a cute Scottish trans girl with a nice accent. But you know what? I think we can rule together, I guess.
First thing I'm doing in Scotland is voting for the trans candidate.
Yeah.
Yeah, the trans separatist party. Yeah.
Oh,
nice.
Okay, I'm wondering, will we do one more paragraph and then we'll call it a night?
Okay, let's do it.
Kyle, you up first. Just come all the way around.
Sure, no problem.
Let me just see to where.
All right, where are we going?
To ceremony, and we'll skip that a little bit. Basically, Bonaparte was going around. This little section here is Bonaparte was going around on tours, and everybody was giving him a good reception. Like all the bourgeoisie were giving him a good reception everywhere he went. Okay, now we're going to get into a little bit of the economic stuff.
That sort of going around making speeches and kind of like making digs at the party of order, that's very Trump. I'll just say, like his little
party of order.
These little jokes.
You see their jacket. They got like an old jacket from the 1950s. I feel bad for them. I'm going to buy them a new jacket.
Yeah, and in Dijon.
All right.
I'll never be on NPR. Sorry.
No problem. Okay. When trade was good, as it still was at the beginning of 1851, the commercial bourgeoisie raged against any parliamentary struggle, lest trade be put out of humor. When trade was bad, as it continually was from the end of February 1851, the commercial bourgeoisie accused the parliamentary struggles of being the cause of stagnation and cried out for them to stop so that trade could start again. The revision debates came on just in this bad period. Since the question here was whether the existing form of state was to be or not to be, the bourgeoisie felt all the more justified in demanding from its representatives the ending of this tortuous provisional arrangement and at the same time the maintenance of the status quo. There was no contradiction in this. By the end of the provisional arrangement, it understood precisely its continuation, the postponement to a distant future of the moment when a decision had to be reached. The status quo could be maintained in only two ways: prolongation of Bonaparte's authority or his constitutional retirement and the election of Cavaignac. A section of the bourgeoisie desired the latter solution and knew no better advice to give its representatives than to keep silent and leave the burning question untouched. They were of the opinion that if their representatives did not speak, Bonaparte would not act. They wanted an ostrich parliament that would hide its head in order to remain unseen. Another section of the bourgeoisie desired, because Bonaparte was already in the presidential chair, to leave him sitting in it, so that everything could remain in the same old rut. They were indignant because their parliament did not openly infringe the constitution and abdicate without ceremony.
Sorry, I got totally lost in the middle and I couldn't find out where I was. Does somebody else want to take this on here?
Were you reading the chat? That's what happened to me. That's what happened to me last time. That's what happens. Anyway.
I was trying to figure out my computer setup here, and I was listening, and then the next thing, when I came back to the text after 2 lines, I got completely lost. Totally fucking incompetent. Who wants to run with this? I know James has just stood out. His daughter's throwing a tantrum. Ezra, you run there.
All right. So it comes down to the status that there's a sentence in the middle. The status quo could be maintained in only two ways: prolongation of Bonaparte's activity or his constitutional retirement, the election of Cavaignac. But the latter solution wasn't going to work. And yeah, Bonaparte was already there. It's
not that there's no indication in this paragraph the latter solution won't work. It's that, you know, the pro-Bonaparte faction of the bourgeoisie, they actually weren't really in favor of an abolition of the Republic. They just kind of wanted Bonaparte to stay in charge.
Fair. Listen to Kyle. Kyle, why don't you take this one?
Yeah, well, having just read it, it's there's two factions, right? There's the Cavaignac faction and the Bonaparte faction. The Cavaignac faction basically encouraged its representatives to sit on their hands and do very little because they assumed that Bonaparte would not act without provocation. And the pro-Bonaparte faction basically wanted the extension of Bonaparte's term. They did not necessarily want an abolition of the Republic, but they did want an extension of Bonaparte's term. So a revision of the Constitution to that effect was needed.
Right. So basically, if the Cavaignac faction had leveraged its power and spoke up, it could have mitigated how far Bonaparte was able to go. Yeah,
and they didn't because they figured, well, you know, Bonaparte has bided his time in the past. Why not? Like, why won't he do the same again? Right? Because they were more of the adhering to the calendar strategy, right? Like, we're gonna let sleeping dogs lie. We're not gonna make waves, and we're just gonna wait till the election, and then his term will be up, and we'll elect Cavaignac, and then we're golden.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. When I was reading this initially, I thought appealing to the calendar was some kind of nationalist appeal to the French Revolution or something. I don't know. Appealing to the calendar now that they name a day after hemp or something. Oh, it's so quaint. But
the Brumaire.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, right. Yeah. Exactly. That's kind of what I thought they were going for, or Marx was going for. I suppose that, not to be too presentist, but yeah, that adhering to the calendar. Let's wait for the election. Let's let our institutions decide this. Let's sit on our hands. We don't want to overplay our hand. Let's just let the Bonapartists overplay their hand. and instead of overplaying their hand, they just kind of run with it and do something unprecedented because they basically have no real opposition. Now that last part, I don't, it's that part's kind of different. We have a more united party of order, essentially. I guess if you wanted to break that down game theoretically, and there's less like of a class conflict between our two sides of our party of order. They're basically like two flavors of similar bourgeois coalitions. Not the same, but similar pacts.
Like Trump still has bourgeois supporters, big funders in the bourgeoisie. But I get the impression that they're very much in the minority. And finance capital is not really on his side.
Elements. He has the what they call the people who were his biggest funders. They are like right-wing hedge fund guys.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I was going to say that. Especially
Mercer Capital, isn't it?
Especially at first, earlier in the presidency, there was big stock market booms when Trump got in the big investor confidence restoration. So there was sort of a similar dynamic.
I don't get the impression he has that support at this moment. He definitely has support from some members of Finance Capital, but I don't get the impression that The Economist is head over heels for Trump. Or
no. You're quite
the Wall Street Journal or whatever, MSNBC. I don't know.
MSNBC is weirdly sort of seen as the left wing of the media, which is bonkers.
But they have Finance Capital
CNBC.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
CNBC.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you. Yeah.
Sorry. Our media alphabet soup is just about as brain melting as the left. But that is not the case here. Trump has a genuine crisis of legitimacy. Essentially, his approval ratings are not great, and they've been surprisingly high throughout most of his presidency. COVID and the sending in the feds has really tanked him with a lot of people that would normally.
Hello?
Trump gets the hello.
Esri, you cut out there. Esri, cut out there. Earth calling, Esri.
But yeah, I think most of Trump's support is just from a group of extremely loyal, they're pretty what's the word, dogmatic.
You have weird stuff like the CEO of Wendy's is a big Trump guy. The CEO of Disney is a big Trump supporter. But they don't talk openly about it too much. It's more just reported that they're giving lots of money to him.
And the Mattress King guy. Was it the Pillow King guy? I can't remember. Something to do with beds.
Yeah, there's a Mattress King guy. He's a real weirdo. Anybody know his name? I can't remember his name.
What's his what did he do? What's his deal?
He's got quite a fruity background. I think he was super into crack and booze, and he had a real life turnaround story. But he's a big Trump donor.
Does he say really unusual things? Or have really unusual
Yeah, he's usually quite amusing. Whenever I've only had clips of him on Majority Report kind of shows. So I've never seen him in a full interview. I've only ever heard clips, so it doesn't really give him the adequate context. But it does sound like quite a fruity mover, that's for sure.
It's like Kanye. Kanye is a Trump supporter.
Not anymore.
Oh
Not
yeah,
anymore.
He's half of a Trump supporter, I think. I think he just likes his aesthetic.
the woke dominionist candidate in Kanye has collapsed since we last talked. So just noting that for history, that woke Gilead is not on the horizon.
I think he has like a conflict with like his aesthetic and like his rational, the rational part of his brain and like the reptilian part of his brain.
I think
Because he's like a combination of Bernie and Trump, I think.
he's somebody. He strikes me as somebody who has like mental health problems. Is what he actually strikes me. Right, are we kind of finished here for tonight? I think this is where we should leave it. My brain is starting to totally shut down. The whiskey and the beer has done its damage.
I think we've lost Esri as well to internet woes.
Oh God!
Yeah,
wait. Okay, let me remove her and then add to stream. Okay, so I think what I'll do is I'll kick her off. Well, let's go offline. I'll kick her off here and. So she can come back in and okay. Okay, everybody, thanks very much for joining us in the chat. We had quite a few in the chat tonight. Let's give them a wee bit of a shout out before we go. We've had now some of the chat is gone, so I can't see it all, but we have Red Tide. Here's Esri's back. You're back, Esri? Esri's back. We have Rene Moncoya, we've had Senoso, Grimlock, Alex Marquez, Patreon. How are you, Alex? If some of these people are patrons and I don't see it, sorry, because I kind of forget. Who, to be honest.
Getting too big for your britches, Tom.
Don't think it's Stank's in there.
No, it's because once when I've actually interacted a bit, I remember it. But Stank, who else? Grimlock, there we go, Grimlock. Red Tide, we said Red Tide, my God, what am I doing?
Yeah, we have Renee, we got Fugat, some bitch named Esri, we got Derek in the chat.
Oh, Derek. Hey, Derek.
Yeah, Derek in
Benjamin.
there, I didn't see you.
Just once.
Just once. Okay. Derek said he'd try and come, but he had a meal with his family, so I think
it's all good. Glad everything's all right.
Yeah, me too. Okay, now let's take it offline, and sure, we will chat to you all next week. We're going to try and finish chapter 6. It should be fairly easy. It's only 10 pages, and then we're on to our wrap-up chapter. Hopefully, we only have a couple of streams left, and then we'll be taking a break for a few months, and then we'll come back roaring with whatever it is next. We'll see. We know what we want.
We've got our preferred candidate. We're not confused like the bourgeoisie.
No,
that's right. We can line up behind one candidate, kind of like the it'll be more like the Democrats outflanking Bernie.
Yeah, we could be incompetent enough not to pull it off. That's not to be underestimated. Okay, everybody.
Yes, of course.
Let's go offline.
All right.
Bye, everyone. Cheers.